All right, you guys, welcome to the Hungry for More call. I have my guest with me today, my man Clay Sweet. Thanks for jumping on with us. Executive Vice President of FFL Guardian, also a Hall of Fame producer. And today, Clay, you and I are going to talk a little bit about how we underwrite life insurance in the simplified issue space. Obviously, we wrote a ton of business last year. How much did you write last year?
$432,000.
$432,000 in business on his own pen. I wrote 511,000 in business. So between us, we almost wrote $1 million in business, primarily in Arizona. And so we've learned how to underwrite life insurance in this space. And we want to share with you guys what it's going to take to go out there and do that same of business or more. And the only difference between doing $500,000 and $1 million is obviously more appointments. But the purpose of today's training, you guys, is to share with you how to easily break down and figure out what and where you're going to place your clients with as you're sitting with them in the home. So that way you can go out and serve your clients better. You can go make more money, and you can get quicker and faster in your appointments so you can see more people and help more people. So first off, let's talk about simplified issue life insurance, Clay. Did you know about simplified issue insurance before you found out about Family First Life?
No, I knew nothing about insurance in general before I joined Family First Life. I was completely green.
Completely green, right? So as was I, right? I knew about the medical underwriting insurance. And so for me, when I'm like simplified issue, what's that mean? So the easy way to understand this, guys, there's no medical exams, okay? Everything is done through an electronic application on the insurance carrier's website through their portal. Okay. So what that means is, I like to say about 90% of the time, we're going to have a decision on if the client's going to be approved or declined in the home. And that allows us to properly help the client while we're sitting there with them, or pivot to another carrier in the event we need to. So no medical exams. Every carrier has certain limitations on age, amounts, and what they're willing to accept or not willing to accept. So let's talk about the next thing, which is, what are they looking for? What are the two things that these companies look for when we're, or what are we looking for? I should better phrase that as an underwriter when we're trying to figure out which carrier to go to.
So I like to, break it down, by age, health.
Okay.
Obviously, with Americo's preferred smokers advantage, I want to make sure that they're, the smoker, non-smoker, but predominantly age and health is going to point me in the right direction where I'm going in the simplified issue space.
Okay. So we're talking age and health. Now, these carriers, guys, they're looking at two things. They're looking at, number one, prescriptions. And how do they check prescriptions?
They check what's called your MIB report. It's called the Medical Information Bureau. Okay. All the carriers use this. They're going to check your prescription history, your medical background, criminal history, to make sure that you are who you say you are, and that everything is there where it's supposed to be.
Exactly. And guys, don't be afraid to tell your clients this. The more you inform them and the more knowledge you give them, A, it builds up your credibility. But then B, they start to understand the process and what needs to happen as you're sitting there with the home. So they're going to check prescriptions through the MIB, and then they're going to ask you questions to see if you're going to admit to a specific medical history or background issue or things like that, right? So we're talking two things, you guys. We're talking prescription and we're talking admission. So prescription is the MIB check, what medical, what's going on in the medical background, criminal history, things like that, driving record, etc. And then two, when you ask the questions on the application, what are they going to answer yes to? And is that something that's going to give them the ability to get approved, or will that turn them down? Okay. All right. So then the next thing. Now, Clay, when you got started, you said you knew nothing about insurance.
No.
Okay. When you went out into your first appointment, your first week in the field, how much of the underwriting guides, how much did you know about where to place customers if they had diabetes, if they had blood sugar, high blood sugar, or they had high blood pressure or whatever? How much of that did you know?
So I didn't know a whole lot, but what I did do is I have the mentality, like, I think worst case scenario. So I think, like, if I go in and this person has 47 things wrong with them, where am I going to go? Now at FFL, we have a great system where you're going to call your manager and get, the recommendation on where to go. But for me, in my first week and a half, I relied heavily on preparation. I think that as a new agent, you can rely on the FFL system, but what really helped me in the beginning was preparation. Now, what do I mean by that? I made sure I had all my underwriting guidelines. I made sure that I was on FFL America. I mean, FFL America is so much more robust now than it was then. But even back then, you could go on products and go through all the underwriting guidelines. So my first week and a half, I was a lot more confident probably than most, because I took the time to go through the FFL America website and go through the products. And I knew that I would either have you or Julius or you or Grady answering the phone when I was in the home. Okay. But nonetheless, it was still.
So you did your due diligence, but you didn't know where to go when you sat with your first 10, 20 clients.
Not at all.
Okay. So, and neither did I, by the way, right? Because I had no clue of, what Americo accepted or didn't accept, or what another carrier accepted, right? So, and just like you guys here, if it's your first appointment, you guys are just getting started. Maybe you've been with us for 30 days. The first thing we always say is get through your first 100 appointments as quick as you can, because you're going to see just about every scenario out there.
So true.
Right. And then you'll be an expert. But before then, what do you do? Right. So the first thing is you want to make sure you have your cheat sheets printed up, or you know how to get to them. Okay. There's a term cheat sheet, and then there's a final expense cheat sheet. And what those do is those take most of the medical diagnosis that a person has been experienced with, and it breaks it down by carrier on who's going to accept it, under what parameters, or if they're not, to make it easier for you. So, after you complete the financial inventory, if I were you, and this is what I did, and I'm sure this is what you did, and if you didn't, please correct me. But I would check the final expense cheat sheet, have an idea of where I'm going to go, or the term one, whichever one. And before I called my manager, I would kind of walk them through what the client was in. I'm saying, hey, I think they're good for this, but keep me honest, is this the best fit for my client? So that way you're starting to try to at least figure it out. And if you get it wrong, that's okay, because we can guide you. But if you get it right, now you're figuring it out. Now you're going to be able to learn how to do that.
Exactly. So, I was a big fan of kind of, for the first 8 to 10 appointments, kind of shutting up and figuring out where to go.
Okay.
From calling my upline. But after about appointment 10, I started seeing lisinopril and atorvastatin and metformin every other appointment. And I was getting told Eagle every other appointment. So I'm just, eventually you're going to go, the light bulb's going to go off and you're going to start writing. And then if it gets declined, then I'll feel, I'll totally reach out and or I'll make sure, if in the beginning, even if you know where to go, or you think you know where to go, it's worth a quick phone call. Say, hey, look, I think I'm good with Americo. Like Julius said, keep me honest. I want to put the client in the best position possible. Is this where you would go? Perfect. It's just what I thought. I'm having a good day. I'm agreeing with my product specialist.
Yep.
Makes you look good, gives you credibility. 2 opinions are better than 1.
Okay. So they call in, they know where to go. We help them out. Okay. Now let's say we're not on the phone, right? Or let's say you want to learn how to do this, right? How did we learn outside of checking with our upline or our manager, or checking a cheat sheet? Well, number one, what's one thing that you do? What's a best practice that you do and you've told your team when you're in a home and you're just unsure?
So I think one of the best things ever created was the Americo underwriting prescription check on page 3 of the Americo app, because you can find out in 5 minutes if you can put them in the best position possible. Americo is our best product, bar none. It puts the client in the best position possible, and it pays us the most. So why wouldn't I want to go with that every time? So if I'm even remotely unsure, and all the agents that I work with know that I'll say that right away. I'll say, hey, did you run a quick prescription check? Because I did it on Saturday. I was telling Julius that I had a young lady that had some brain surgery a few years past, and I got her through with an Americo product. And I would have never even thought to do that, except for I preached to all my agents run a prescription check. And it just was embedded in my brain. So I could have sat around for 30 minutes trying to figure out another different type of coverage, but because I did the prescription check, it worked out perfect.
Yep. So when in doubt, check the Americo's prescription check on page 3 of their applications.
If I could, if you don't mind, one thing I will say is we don't need to talk about Americo at that point. Because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to talk about how great Americo is and then run the prescription check and get denied. So what I do is I say, look, I think I have a good idea of where I'm going to go, but I want to make sure. So I'll just literally fill out the app. They don't need to know that it's with Americo. They don't need to know any of that. So I get them, and I'd say, are you familiar with what a HIPAA release is? I get them to sign the HIPAA release, and then I have my answer. If it gets approved, cool. And then I start talking about Americo. If it doesn't, then I move on and they're none the wiser. So, traditionally that's how I like to do it. It takes 5 minutes. Yeah. It's not a long time.
There is one other tip that I'd like to share with you guys that I learned not too long ago. So if, sometimes clients may be eligible for term and or whole life depending on their medical background. And so sometimes you might want to try to get them into a term plan, right? So what I'll do is I'll run the prescription check on term and they get declined. Well, guess what? That doesn't decline them for their whole life with Americo. So you can run both prescription checks, get a term decline, but get Americo approval.
Yeah, if you get declined, that's a great point. Because even if you make it all the way through the app and you get declined on a term product, you can still move right over to Eagle. I mean, I would say 75% of my business is Americo because I do my daggondest to write Americo.
Yep. So let's talk beyond that, right? Because we get that part of it now. So now let's talk about how do you really figure things out when you're just not sure, right? And what I mean by not sure is we have a list of prescriptions, right? So we got a list of prescriptions and you're like, well, a lot of these are similar. You got your diabetes meds, you got your cholesterol meds, you got your thyroid, whatever, right? But then you got a few that you're not sure of. So what do? Maybe you run through prescription check. Maybe it's not the best fit on the prescription check. The next thing you want to do, and this is how I learned, is you go to the underwriting guides, right? Because when you go to the underwriting guides, they all have a few things. Number one, they have build charts. So you guys need to be mindful of build charts. So if you have someone, they go based off of height and weight. So if you have someone too small or too big, they may not approve it. So they have to fit within a certain range. So you want to make sure of that. The only exception to that is Aetna's whole life plan. But outside of that, they'll tell you which medications they do accept or they don't, and or what conditions they accept or they don't. So if you are ever unsure, you can always go to the underwriting guides. Our underwriting guides can be found right now on fflamerica.com. Go ahead and click the products tab, and then you go to the specific product you're trying to figure out.
And one thing that I did in the beginning was, I think this goes back to time management. So like on non-money making hours, what are money making hours? Is dial time and running appointments. So there's all kinds of time in between. So you have your people that want to recruit, you have your people that want to become better producers. You can call. I in the beginning, I spent a lot of time watching videos. I spent a lot of time on FFL America, a lot of time on the phone with the companies themselves. No one knows the products better than the companies themselves. So I call Americo if I've got a question about Americo Eagle. I call, Moo if I've got a question about their accidental, so on and so forth. So I think that if you're the proactive agent is always going to win, because if I'm proactive and I'm calling the carriers or going on FL America and learning, being proactive in that approach, as opposed to being reactive and not knowing anything because I didn't do any type of research, and getting in the home and let's say they have diabetic neuropathy and they have COPD. What do? Well, if I do my research, then I would know kind of where to go. But if I don't, then I'm kind of, stuck to making sure that my manager answers his phone or her phone. So I just wanted to drive that point.
Yeah. And the one thing I would say about that, Clay, that's spot on, because I've called the carrier multiple times to figure out things, because let's face it, guys, we're not the product experts. Do we know about a bunch of products? Sure. Do we want to help you? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, these carriers work for us, right? Like they work for us. We sell their products, right? So they need us. And so they have specific departments for us to call and ask these questions, because that's what they're there to do. So leverage that. Okay. when you're in a predicament, you got a medication not coming up in the guidelines, you don't know what to do, like you've never heard of the med, what's another best practice that you've given your team?
So I'm a huge fan of this. So they have no idea. Like when you have your iPad up, you work with a state, you're licensed with a state, you're a local field underwriter, you're very official, you have your badge. They have no idea what you're looking at behind that screen. So I'm a huge fan of Google. I don't know every prescription by heart. I don't know, but I'm telling you what, if you look on my Google history on my iPad, it's nothing but prescriptions. You can pull it up. So I'll have people saying I'm taking, a certain medication for blood pressure, and I'll look and it's for schizophrenia. And I'll say, have you, been checked in any mental facilities in the last 2 to 3 years? Or, it's saved me multiple times. And at the end of the day, all you're looking to is put the client in the best position possible and save time. That's really what you're doing. You're saving time. Because if I can get that answer fast, and I know that they're not going to qualify for Eagle right out of the gate, then I can move on to another carrier and call my manager or whatever. So I've been a big fan of Google because you can learn. I mean, it's at your fingertips.
Absolutely.
Huge fan. So don't be scared to Google. They have no idea what you're doing behind that. And I'll even tell them, I'll say, look, I've never heard. It's funny as you do this business, like in the beginning, you shut up and you're so scared that they're going to see right through you that you don't know the business. Man, I'm answering phone calls from agents in the home. I'm Googling prescriptions because I'm like, Mary, you're taking something that I've never seen before in my entire life. I got to Google this real quick. I just flat out tell them. They'll giggle and they're glad for it because I'm going the extra mile. So don't be scared to do that.
And there's one other thing I wanted to mention on that. So Google is awesome. I've used it plenty of times as well when I'm just unsure. But the other thing is a lot of these medications can be prescribed for multiple reasons. So there's another thing you want to start asking your clients about. So if there's a medication, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but maybe it's prescribed for blood pressure, congestive heart failure, and something else, right? And the client says, hey, I take it for blood pressure. Okay, we're going to take their word for it. But then one thing that I do, Clay, is I'll say, okay, have you ever had congestive heart failure? Have you ever had any of these other potential medical diagnoses to try to just rule those out to avoid a potential decline on MIB? Because if, they may take it, but then they just happen to leave that off, then you're going to try to, you're circling around to try to figure it out.
And there's a variety of different reasons why the client, some clients forget about what they're taking and why they're taking it. Some clients are embarrassed that they're taking certain medications. I don't think a lot of times there's like ill will. I mean, sometimes people try to, pull a wool over your eyes, but like for the most part, there's, they're just people just like us, and they don't, I don't remember every prescription I've ever been prescribed. And so, and that's another thing too, I want to hit on real quick is when you ask the client, like, what are you currently taking and have been prescribed in the last 2 to 3 years? Like, just because they've been prescribed doesn't mean they're actually taking it, because a lot of clients are not taking what they've been prescribed. So you got to be careful on how you ask that question. You have to say, what are you currently taking and have been prescribed in the last 2 to 4 years?
Yep.
And so I found that once I started asking it that way, I was finding a whole lot of more medications.
Oh yeah. And then all of a sudden I stopped taking it last week. About that one. Right. So they're like, oh yeah. So that's a key question, you guys, because you're going to find a lot of meds that they say they've stopped taking and is still going to pop up on their MIB. And then that's, that could be a deal breaker. Okay. Guys, if you're finding this helpful, if this is something that you think will help you be a better underwriter, what are we dropping in there? Let's drop a 1 milli. Drop a 1 milli in there, because our goal as an agency is to get to 1 million per month in the next 90 days. That's our goal. So drop a 1 milli that this is helpful in helping you underwrite some business. Clay, anything else you want to touch on in terms of underwriting?
No, I think that, we covered some good, basics. I think that the agents that are really coming into their own are the ones that are asking good questions, that are being proactive, that are calling the carriers, hey, listen, man, I've looked at a few different places on FL America. I've called the carrier. I'm still not understanding, that goes for underwriting, product knowledge, all of that. I'll give you a great example. I didn't have a clue how the payment protector worked for America. I got on the phone with a product guy on my way to an appointment. He told me about it for about 10 minutes. I sold a $4,800 payment protector right when I got out of the car. I literally talked about it and sold it. just for me being proactive and asking about that product. And that's predominantly what I've been writing for the last several months. So, just taking the initiative and, really putting yourself out there, guys, I think will, like if you own a restaurant, and you're a chef, you're going to brush up, you're going to travel, you're going to brush up on your cooking skills. If you're an insurance agent, you need to sharpen your tools. Like you were saying earlier, like always try to get better, but don't learn products in the middle of dial day. Like let's pick and choose, like when we're trying to get better, non-money making activity. And, you want to do your money making activities Mondays and Thursdays and when you're running, and then non-money making activities is when you're dialing or calling the carriers and asking your upline questions and doing your due diligence when it comes to underwriting.
Yep. And so we're going to leave you with this, guys. Obviously, we didn't go through every prescription or every product or how to actually explain the case or the program to the client, because you should be learning that when you call your manager, and your manager is going to give you the 4 or 5 different bullets on what to say and how to say it. And the products and the company you're going to choose are going to be based on what the client's eligible for at the end of the day, right? And so as long as you're starting the appointment off the right way, saying, hey, my job is to see what you're eligible for today, and then I'm going to show you some options. And then once you find the option that's best suited for your mortgage protection or your final expense needs, we'll submit an application to see if we can get you covered. You've set it up so you're working through eligibility, and this process, what we are sharing with you today, is not something you need to know the process versus memorizing all the medications. Over time, you're going to memorize the medications because you see the same ones like you were mentioning, but knowing that process on the front end will help it become easier for you to underwrite in the home when you're just not sure what to do.
And one last thing, just before we get off, 1 hour in the home is the equivalent of 20 studying. So don't go the opposite way after we've had this call and sit on the sidelines because you're nervous because we went over a bunch of stuff. Jump in the pool, because you're going to learn by doing. You're not going to learn by sitting on the sidelines reading a playbook. It's good to do that, but definitely run as fast and as hard as you can. Because like Julius said, once you run your first 100 appointments, you're going to have seen tons of stuff. You're going to know underwriting. Typically after your first 10 to 12 appointments, you will have seen everything you're going to see. Now there's some outlier situations, but we pretty much all run into the same thing all the time. So, don't walk into this situation, run, and then, learn as you're going to learn while you're earning, for sure.
For sure. So guys, I hope you guys found some value out of this. Our goal is to continue to pour into you guys, make your job easier, help you guys help more clients so you can make more money. So go out there. Today's obviously dial day. Let's go out there, book a bunch of appointments. Your money in this business is earned not on field days. It's actually earned on dial days. So everything we talked about is a culmination of doing it today. Meaning if you don't dial today, you're not going to have anyone to see tomorrow or the day after to even worry about underwriting, because there's no one to sit in front of or help. So it starts with getting on the phones, ffldialteam.com, ffldialteam.com. That's going all the way to 8 p.m. Pacific tonight. Jump on there with the rest of the team, book up your day for Tuesday and Wednesday. Go serve your clients. If you guys need help when you're in an appointment, call Clay, call myself, call any of the managers out there. Start to learn this process so you can become a better underwriter, so you can serve more families, make more money, and earn that coveted red jacket if that's what you're shooting for this year. Even if it's not what you're shooting for, it's going to help you do your job and learn how to do this better. So guys, thank you for your time today. Clay, thank you for coming on and sharing with us. Appreciate you. And we'll see you guys on the leaderboards. Bye for now.